Have you ever been stuck in a dilemma where you had to choose between being right and being kind? What if you were in a situation where no matter what you chose, in the end, you'd have to lose something? What if you were to see your enemy on the verge of death and you were the only one who could save him? Would you go ahead and help him no matter how offending his actions had been? Or would you contemplate just leaving him right there to his death just because you both had differences in the past? Would you be the better person, or would you choose to forget about the whole ordeal and go back to your happily ever after? Nah, don't worry. This isn't another one of those videos where we make you reconsider your life decisions. And neither are we here to bore you to death. We're just here to discuss the chapter The Enemy with the perspective of the Black Hat. The Black Hat represents the negatives or the areas of improvement. And while we're going to focus on the negatives alone, let's not forget that everything has a positive side as well. Anyways, this story is set in Japan during the Second World War, when an injured American army man washes up on the coast near the home of a Japanese surgeon, Dr. Sadao. Sadao's first instinct, being a doctor, was to help the badly injured man, that is, until he found out that he was actually a white man, at which point Sadao hesitated about treating him. Being a doctor, it was his duty and responsibility to help an injured man, enemy or not. But instead, he thought throwing him back into the river was a great idea. He was a patriot, no doubt. But did being a citizen come before being a human being? I'd personally like to say no. But anyways, later he reluctantly took him home. His wife, Hannah, was petrified by the idea of having a white man in her home and tried to persuade Sadao to not operate on him since they had a family and kids. What would happen if the general found out that they were sheltering a white man? They'd definitely get into trouble. The servants wanted nothing to do with Tom. They couldn't even fathom the idea of touching or even breathing the same air as him. So they decided to leave the house. Sadao wanted to get rid of Tom as soon as possible, even though he did treat him. So he informed the general about his predicament and tried to get Tom killed. Even though Americans had been nothing but kind and welcoming to Sadao and Hannah when they'd been in America, they still thought of Tom as an enemy and tried to get rid of him. And even though it's clear that the young boy had been brutally tortured as a prisoner in Japan, they refused to believe that any of it was true. In the end, Sadao decided to send Tom away himself, since the general, being a self-centered man, forgot all about the white man in Sadao's house as soon as he left. He'd been more focused on the matters relating to his own health.
World War created enmity among the Japanese and Americans, which led to a confusion among Sadao and Hannah whether to save Tom or not. Tom was already gunshot, and due to the bare and lonely coast filled with dangerous rocks, he was heavily injured and he was in an unconscious state with critical health conditions. When Hannah called up Yumi to watch Tom, just because Tom was an American who was enemy of the Japanese, Yumi scared and refused to do so. Then, Sadao and Hannah were very much confused about whether to handle Tom to the police as prisoner or to leave him back into the sea because they feared that if they helped Tom, they would be in a great trouble.
A doctor's duty is to save lives and he did it, but he also considered to kill Tom by informing the general. Hannah had resistance to treat and take care of him. Hannah hesitates to give silk quill to a Japanese. The servants were against the idea of treating the white man and they asked him not to heal the wounds. They were not grateful about the help American would have done while they were in America.
Sadao's father. Sadao's father had never been friendly to Sadao since Sadao's childhood. He was a bit strict in growing up Sarav. Every time he taught patriotism and purity to his race, to Sarav, but not the humanity to live. He considered his race the most important and the most valuable to live. Even in Sarav's marriage, the first thing he asked was, is Hannah a Japanese girl? Knowing this quality of his father, even Sarav first considered Hannah as a Japanese girl and then he started loving Hannah.
Every character in the story has got negatives in them. Even the hero of the story has got negatives. Then why not the villain? General Takima. The general was a self-obsessed, cruel, cunning man who hated the Americans like every other Japanese. People say that he was so cruel that he beat his wife rudely. A man being aggressive with his own wife? What can be so cruel than this? During the wartime, he didn't allow Dr. Sarav to go with the soldiers as he may need an operation for which he required highly qualified and sincere doctors like Dr. Sarav, proving that he was selfish. When he got to know about the presence of the American soldier in the house of Dr. Sarav, he learned that he won't be able to resist more than one attack. He thought of his personal interest only and took no chance to risk Dr. Sarav in any ways, as he knew no one other than Dr. Sarav could operate on him with greater success. Keeping that in mind, he planned to have the American killed and his body removed by his personal assassins, which won't raise any suspicion, and in this way Dr. Sarav would remain safe. General Takima was moralless and selfish. I would have personally really appreciated him if he had tried to catch Dr. Sarav red-handed for cheating on this nation. But he didn't do that. He only wanted to protect him in spite of knowing that he was a traitor. He wasn't a good general too. He didn't want his army to have a good doctor but always wanted himself to have a good doctor.